Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While we wait for the assessment from the LTA and the Rail Reliability Task Force, I note that the SP LRT reliability is being closely monitored, and our transport and maintenance workers are working hard to maintain high reliability for our commuters. With an aging infrastructure and higher commuter demands with the new Pongo infrastructure like the PDD and the SIT coming online, how could the ministry support and resource our operators better on top of creating redundancy systems, as Minister has updated, to implement safety and condition monitoring systems? How can we also ensure that our workers are equipped with the latest skills and knowledge, especially with the Rail Manpower Development Package that looks into upskilling our workers come to a funding end?
Thank you, Ms. Siow, for your question. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have been working very closely with the unions and with the rail operators on making sure that we are not just upgrading the hardware of the systems, but also the software. We want to make sure that the workers who are working on maintaining train reliability are of the right capabilities, of the right skills, and also are able to manage the new systems that are coming on board. As we upgrade the systems with new technology, new capabilities are needed. And that is why the fund that Ms. Siow mentioned has been very useful for us to support the workers who are then able to deal with these new systems and to maintain them well. The operators also have a rail reliability fund, which we work with them to try to encourage them with incentives to focus on training their workers, building up their capabilities, ensuring that they're able to do the things that they need to do. So all in all, I think there is a collaborative effort. We are working very hard with the support of the unions to make sure that the workforce is capable and can do the things that we need them to do every day, every night. Thank you.
Mr. Leong Eng Hua.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for sharing on the technical details of the breakdown of the BP LRT. We are all now too familiar with the inherent technical challenges that the BP LRT system has. And we do appreciate it is operating in a pretty challenging ground terrain there in Bukit Panjang. But so in that context, I want to ask the Minister whether LTA will consider adding more buses to run parallel to the BP LRT system as a way to enhance resiliency and also as a measure to cope with the increasing ridership as the town's population is also increasing.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Liang, for your question. Indeed, Mr. Liang and I are both very familiar with the ins and outs, literally, of the BPRT. For a number of reasons, we were together working on transport issues a decade ago. And I have as much vested interest, if not more, since BPRT passes both our constituencies. I want to thank him for his suggestion. The BPRT reliability has generally improved, I think, over the years. It is a unique system. It was retroactively fitted in, unlike the SPRT, which was built from scratch. And over the last 10 years, in fact, we have been working on a systemic upgrade of the LRT, the power system, the trains. We are almost complete, and I think the results are showing the reliability has indeed been better. As for bus services, today there are already several bus services that run parallel to or complement the LRT. For example, I think Service 976 was launched in 2019, specifically to support commuters during the renewal works. And together with Service 974, these services connect Chua Chu Kang and Bukit Panjang interchanges and serve many of the same neighborhoods as the LRT. We also have services 920, 922, and 972, which provide alternative connections, first mile, last mile connections within Bukit Panjang. I will certainly review your suggestion to introduce more parallel run bus services, but we will have to consider other factors like ridership, availability of bus captains, as you know, which is a key constraint for us, as well as to prioritize these relative to requests for bus services in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Just two SQs for the Minister. The first in relation to the question on the penalties and the incidents. Specifically, I understand that in relation to last year's East-West line breakdown for about 6 days, I think the penalty was reduced from 3 million to 2.4 million. And I wanted to double check because I think specifically on the RTS Act, the operators can be fined a maximum of higher of 1 million or 10% of the fare revenues. And so with a reduction in the fine, would the Minister be concerned that the deterrent effect would actually be lessened as a result? And secondly, the second SQ is in relation to the 15 key incidents that the LTA has put out last Friday. For these incidents, I note that the LTA or the government will be putting in an additional $1 billion to raise the reliability and maintenance standards. What is the corresponding requirements on the part of each of the operators in terms of the additional investments that they may have to put in? And at the same time, given the incidents, the ministry's view on the financial penalties that may be imposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chua, for your questions. You have two questions. Let me just take the second one first on the financial penalties and what is the responsibility of the PTOs in terms of using the $1 billion and what is their financial commitment. Well, before they do that, I would just sort of briefly explain how the LTA assesses penalties. We assess financial penalties for very serious disruptions, and we do so looking at the culpability of the operators in terms of their contribution to that environment. Sometimes it's not the PTO's doing. Sometimes there are situations where it's human error, or there are people, for example, passengers doing things. It's nothing to do with the operators, and they may cause a disruption, but it does not affect the operator, and therefore they're not liable to regulatory action. Insofar as specific incidents, we will look at how the systems that are affected, what is the solution that is required, and if it is a hardware upgrade and it's an asset upgrade, the current system is really a joint process between the LTA and the operator. The LTA, of course, is responsible for asset ownership, in some ways asset renewal as well. And we work closely with the operators on the ground to prioritize some of these things and use the monies accordingly. For your first question, which is related to the penalties and whether or not, with respect to the earlier incident last September, whether the reduction in the penalties would have a deterrent effect. As you pointed out, the penalties are fairly significant. The penalty we have issued is well above the 1 million threshold, is higher. We had given them a $3 million penalty, and then we had, after appeal, reduced that penalty to about, I believe, 2 million. I think it is a fair decision, one that we have looked at, looking at, again, the respective responsibilities and culpability of the operator. They have made a case to say there were certain decisions that perhaps were out of their remit. We have looked at their case, and we have decided to reduce the penalties accordingly, and I think it was a reasonable decision. The details of the decision, we have already come out to talk about. We can give you more information if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I have two supplementary questions. I think the first one is that I think so far reports in the media as well as what have been shared in this House seem to suggest that there has been no observed trends or at least systemic factors causing the recent spate of incidents since July. But it would definitely seem like a really terrible luck for all of these to happen in such a short span of time. Now, with more lines to be added to the system, there will be more assets to be maintained, more manpower, more budget that will be needed. So how will the MOT and PTOs work to assure that our rail performance will continue to be reliable going forward? Second is that given what Minister had shared earlier about the example of how one disruption can greatly reduce the MKBF, achieving of that. So is this still a fair measurement of rail reliability? Thank you.
Minister Siow.
I thank Ms. Tin for your questions. I took a look at the number of disruptions for the corresponding period last year. It was about 13 compared to 15 this year. And I was trying to figure out with the same numbers, why is it that there was so much attention this year? And my suspicion is, well, not suspicion, my hypothesis, which I think is true, probably likely, is that the impact of the individual disruptions were far greater than the ones that happened last year. But as Ms. Tin mentioned, actually, as we expand the rail network, and we are in the process of doubling our rail network over 10 years, if we are able to not double the number of train disruptions, actually our rail reliability would have improved. That is not to say we will not put in effort to minimize the number of train disruptions. We will, and we will put in our effort. We will more than double our effort to do so. But this is mathematics, this is reality. I think we have to see what we can do to try our best to improve the standards over time, improve the quality, but it's not possible for us to drive down to zero disruptions. And so therefore, looking at the MKBF, as I mentioned in my speech, it is actually not very meaningful beyond high levels of reliability, not meaningful when you have small numbers, single-digit disruptions. What it does help is just to give a general indicator for two reasons. One, it helps us compare with other systems who also use the same indicator. And two, it helps us track our performance over time. And to that end, as I mentioned in my speech, LTA does track other indicators, and we will put out more of these indicators so that all of us will have a better sense of how our real performance is. Thank you.
I would like to first commend our PTOs and also LTA for keeping our MKBF to one of the highest in the world. In light of that, I'd like to ask Minister, given under the new rail financing framework, how does LTA ensure that accountability is taken, or rather, how do you ensure that the suppliers are held accountable for the contractual obligations for their train systems availability and also their lifespan? Because at the end of the day, the quality of the train at the point of procurement is really important as well.
Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Po, for your question. Well, under the new rail financing framework, LTA is responsible for the ownership and renewal of assets. The operators are responsible for maintenance. There's no perfect system. Prior to the new rail financing framework, it was the operators that was responsible for the asset renewal. And there were similar tensions between the regulator and the operator on who should be doing what. And I think what is important is that both the regulator and the operator work together to make sure that we understand the causes of problems in the system, understand how the equipment works, when the equipment should be replaced or repaired, and to be able to do so openly and in a collaborative fashion. And this is what, in fact, we have been doing over the last decade, and this has, in fact, been, I think, the main reason why the rail reliability performance has improved. We will, I think, at the edges have to try to improve the communications and the performance, because the operators are on the ground, they know, they have some experience, they know what they're supposed to do, and they have certain things they are supposed to do. And the regulator, or rather the purchaser, in this case LTA, of the assets, will also have to work with the vendor to make sure that whatever it is, their responsibilities are properly accomplished. During the last few disruptions I have sat in for the crisis management meetings, the vendors were there. And in the cases of some of the vendors, they sit in with our operator. They have an office within the depot or the operation center so that they are able to react more quickly. So it's things like that that we'll continue to do to make sure that the vendors are closely involved with what we do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for the clarifications. I'd like to put on public record also my appreciation to LTA, SBSD, and SMRT for the good work on the ground. Two supplementary questions, Minister. One is on the expansion of the rail system and therefore the increasing complexities of maintenance. How would MOT or LTA put in the necessary finances, the necessary engineering time. And equally important, like what my colleague Yowaning has asked, the training regimes that would be able to maintain an increased network of complexities to serve the public. On the second SQ, more pertaining to Jalan Kayu, we know that the NEL, the SP, LRT are very congested systems. And while we do the good work to rectify some of the breakdowns, the commuters do face increased inconveniences, especially for Jalan Kayu Fernvale, where the bus connectivity is somewhat lacking. My SQ to the Minister is whether LTA would take proactive action to improve the overall connectivity, especially for bus services in Jalan Kayu Fernvale, so that residents can be connected out to other nodes and not, regardless of different improvements, load the NEL. Thank you.
Minister Siow.
Thank Mr. Chi for his question. Maybe I'll take the second one first because I am very familiar with the North-East Line. I've taken the North-East Line since its inception in 2003. In fact, that's the reason why I took my first job. I've seen the North-East Line grow in capacity and in terms of how it has been performing. I've watched it closely. It is a MRT line that we're watching very closely. As you mentioned, the congestion is one of the highest amongst in our MRT network. And we have been looking to see how to alleviate the congestion, as well as really just making sure the reliability is okay so that the impact is not so great, especially during peak hours. The ultimate solution really is to connect the NEL to more train lines. And this is what we're doing because we're building the Cross Island Line. I have to try to make sure things are okay for the next 5 years. But I think when the Cross Island Line connects to Hougang, there will be an opportunity, or it will make the North-East Line more resilient because commuters will be able to discharge to some other routes on the train network. In the meantime, we are looking at how to augment the bus network, but buses ultimately are not a good solution because the capacity of one North-East Line train is 1,500 people. That is 15 to 20 buses end-to-end, just for one train. And that's not forgetting that each train runs at 1 and 2-minute intervals currently at the North-East Line. So buses will never be a complete substitute, but at the margins, if it can help, we will try to see how we can augment the bus capacity along the North-East Line corridor. As for how to support the workers in terms of training regimes, finance, and really getting them up to speed on the new sort of systems that are available. As I mentioned earlier in my reply to Ms. Siow, we have to work very closely with the unions and the operators. I have visited the workers themselves. They not only do the work on a day-to-day basis, they also go for quite a bit of training. And I think whenever they engage in new systems, actually they're quite excited. Hydraulic systems, even things like condition monitoring. These are new things that we have been investing in terms of technology. And in the world, public transport systems don't tend to be highly advanced. Because in the world, most public transport systems don't get a lot of investment and money. In Singapore, we have invested a lot of money. The operators are doing a lot of things in terms of maintenance on condition monitoring, which they showcase to other systems and other cities at international rail conferences. So we are doing what we can, and I think there is no shortage of investment on that front. And we will be happy to work with the unions to see whether or not there are other things that we can do to support our workers in upgrading themselves. Thank you.